It was a quiet March morning in the city of Cedar Creek. The sky was still heavy with dawn mist, and a soft breeze swept through the slowly waking streets. On Jefferson Avenue, a small coffee shop had just opened its doors. A few cars trickled down the road, and birds chirped somewhere in the distance. At a corner gas station on Jefferson and Fifth, a man named Ethan Brooks, 34, pulled up in his pickup truck like he did every weekday. With his worn denim jacket and tall, lean frame, he looked like any ordinary man, until fate decided to nudge him gently off his routine. He stepped out of the truck and started walking toward the store to grab his usual black coffee. That's when he noticed it, just barely, a cardboard box sitting near the dumpster behind the station. At first, he didn't think twice. Trash, probably. Maybe leftovers from the night shift. But then he heard it, a faint whimper, soft enough to be mistaken for the rustle of wind. Ethan stopped, his brows furrowed, and he turned toward the box. Inside, curled up and shaking, was a tiny German Shepherd puppy. It looked no older than 6 or 7 weeks. Its fur was damp and patchy. One eye crusted shut, the other wide with silent panic. No collar, no tag, no note, just a wet towel and a few torn crumbs of stale bread. The puppy didn't bark, didn't growl, only trembled. "Oh, buddy," Ethan murmured, slowly taking off his jacket. He bent down, careful not to make sudden moves. The pup flinched at first, letting out a soft yelp, but Ethan whispered, "I'm not going to hurt you." He scooped the pup gently into the jacket, wrapping it snugly. The little body was ice cold. Ethan couldn't just leave him. As he got into his truck and started driving, he kept glancing at the bundle on the passenger seat. "You're going to meet someone really special," he said softly. "She's going to love you." He thought of his wife, Natalie, 30 years old, recovering at home after a serious leg surgery. She'd been confined to a wheelchair for weeks, frustrated and emotionally worn down. Natalie had grown up around dogs. They'd always talked about getting one someday when the time was right. But now Ethan felt this wasn't about timing anymore. It was about purpose. Their apartment on Linden Avenue sat on the 3rd floor, bathed in morning light. As Ethan opened the door, the scent of lavender and freshly brewed tea greeted him. Natalie was sitting near the window with a book in her lap, her injured leg resting on a pillow. "You're back early," she said, surprised. Ethan smiled and stepped forward. "I brought something." He unfolded his jacket slowly. The puppy peeked out, still trembling. Natalie gasped, "Oh my God!" The puppy looked up at her, and instead of retreating, it let out a soft whimper and reached out a tiny paw. Ethan placed him gently on her lap. Natalie cupped the puppy's head, voice trembling. "You poor baby." The pup let out a little sigh and melted into her hands. And for the first time in weeks, Ethan saw Natalie smile, not just with her lips, but with her whole heart. That deep, warm smile he thought had gone missing came rushing back, like spring breaking through winter. They named him Echo, because he came out of nowhere like a soft, unexpected echo in the middle of their lives. But Echo wasn't just another rescue puppy. He had a reason for being there. And soon, they would discover why, in the most unforgettable way. From a moment, Natalie held the puppy in her lap. Something changed. His tiny body trembled less, his breathing steadied, and in his wide amber eyes was a look not of fear, but recognition. It was as if he had been searching for her, and now he'd found her. Natalie, still cradling him, glanced at Ethan with moist eyes and whispered, "It's like he knows I need him." They named him Echo later that evening, not just for how he came into their lives, but because he seemed to respond to feelings before words. That night, Ethan built him a small bed from an old hoodie and Natalie's soft blanket, placing it beside her wheelchair. But Echo refused to stay there. Instead, he curled up right at her feet, head resting gently against her cast. Natalie didn't protest. In the days that followed, Echo never left her side. Wherever she rolled, he followed. When she cried from the physical therapy, he nudged her hand with his nose, offering silent comfort. When her hand trembled while trying to hold a cup, he steadied her with his calm presence. He was small, fragile even, but there was a quiet strength in him, a strength Natalie felt with every gentle nuzzle and every wag of his tail. By the end of the first week, she had taught him to sit. By the second, he began alerting her when the tea kettle whistled or when her phone buzzed across the room. But more than the small tricks, it was his gaze that struck Ethan the most. Echo watched everything, Natalie's face, her movements, even Ethan's hands. Not with suspicion, but with deep awareness, like he was memorizing their world to better protect it. And Natalie, she was changing too. Her smiles came easier, her voice steadier. The shadows that once lingered in her eyes were slowly fading. She often whispered to Echo as if he understood every word. Perhaps he did, because at night, as she drifted off to sleep, Echo would curl up beside her wheelchair, never more than a few feet away, not just watching, guarding. Ethan began to realize Echo wasn't just healing from something. He was helping Natalie heal too. And whatever had brought that puppy to a cold gas station on Jefferson and Fifth, it wasn't an accident. It was fate. Just 1 month after Echo arrived, the quiet comfort of their home began to shift. It started subtly. At 2:43 a.m., Ethan jolted awake to a short, sharp bark. He blinked in the dark. Echo was standing at the bedroom door, still silent, ears stiff. The pup wasn't whining or pacing like a restless dog. He was alert, rigid, like he was guarding something unseen. Ethan, listen. Nothing. No voices, no footsteps. Just the creak of an old heater and the distant hum of a passing car. But Echo didn't move for minutes. His gaze remained locked on a hallway. The next morning, Ethan brushed it off as a puppy's overactive senses. Until that evening, he returned from work to find Natalie sitting by the window, pale. "Did you leave the back gate open?" she asked quietly. "No," Ethan replied. "You know we never use it." She turned her phone screen toward him. The motion-activated camera showed the gate swinging open slowly at 3:15 a.m., even though no one was visible. "When, maybe?" Ethan offered, though his voice lacked conviction. Natalie didn't respond, just looked down at Echo, who was sitting stiffly beside her, eyes trained on the back door. Later that night, it happened again. At 2:38 a.m., Echo leapt from his bed with a deep growl, one Ethan had never heard before. Not playful, not scared, protective. The puppy charged to the window and barked twice, sharp and furious. Ethan grabbed a flashlight and moved toward the back of the house, heart pounding. The backyard was empty, but the side gate latch was undone again. This time he saw it, a shoe print in the dirt. Not his, not Natalie's. That same night, Natalie swore she heard metal scraping outside the kitchen wall. Echo didn't sleep. He remained stationed by the door, his small body vibrating with tension, his ears twitching at every sound. By now, Ethan knew. This wasn't just coincidence. He spent the next morning inspecting every lock, every latch. Then he installed 2 new motion cameras and ordered motion lights for the backyard. But it wasn't enough to calm the gnawing feeling in his gut. That evening, Ethan tried to relax on the couch while Natalie sipped tea, her leg resting on the footstool. Echo, as always, was curled at her feet. But at 8:07 p.m., Ethan's phone buzzed. Motion detected backyard. He opened the app. The camera feed showed the side gate slowly swinging inward again. This time, something shifted in the shadows. A figure, barely visible, hooded, ducked back just as the motion light clicked on. Ethan froze. "Natalie," he whispered. "Someone's out there." Before he could stand, Echo sprang up with a snarl that echoed through the room. Not barking, growling. Deep, primal. He charged toward the front door, planting himself in front of it like a wall. Natalie's hands trembled. She wheeled herself back slightly, eyes wide. "Ethan, don't go out there." But Ethan already had the baseball bat by the door. He opened it slowly. The street was empty. But on the front step was a note. Just one line. "We see you." Ethan's breath caught in his throat. He crushed the note in his fist and turned back inside. Echo hadn't moved. His body was coiled, ears pinned, eyes locked on the door, as if daring it to open again. That night, none of them slept. Natalie stayed curled under a blanket on the couch. Echo curled beside her with his head across her lap. Ethan sat by the window, eyes darting between the camera feed and the yard. The only sound was Echo's soft growl, barely audible but constant. And that was when Ethan finally understood. Echo hadn't been left in that box by accident. He hadn't just survived. He had been waiting for them, and now he was warning them. Something, or someone was coming. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon when Ethan had to run a quick errand. Just 20 minutes, he promised. Natalie, though hesitant, nodded. "I've got Echo," she said with a small smile, her hand resting on the puppy's head. Echo wagged his tail once but didn't take his eyes off the door as Ethan left. 15 minutes later, the apartment was quiet. Natalie sat at the dining table near the window trying to read, though her gaze kept drifting toward the backyard. Echo was lying on the rug nearby, alert but calm. Then came the noise, a faint metallic clink, like a latch being carefully moved. Natalie froze. Echo stood up instantly, ears stiff. He didn't bark, yet. He walked slowly toward the front door, posture low, but steady. Natalie wheeled herself to the hallway, heart thumping. "Echo," she whispered. He turned to glance at her, then looked back toward the window. A low growl vibrated from his chest. Natalie grabbed her phone and opened the live feed from a camera Ethan had installed near the side gate. At first, it was just static. Then the motion light blinked on. A hooded figure crouched low by the fence, holding something long and metallic. A crowbar? Natalie gasped, hitting record. She reached for her phone to call Ethan, but it slipped from her fingers and clattered to the floor. Her wheelchair shifted slightly. Echo didn't move. He stayed facing the door, every muscle tense. Then the knock. Slow, deliberate. Echo exploded. He barked louder than Natalie had ever heard before, lunging at the door, his small frame like a shot of lightning. The knock turned into pounding, the doorknob jiggling. Natalie screamed, "Go away," but the attacker didn't stop. Echo threw his weight against the door again and again, barking with a fury far beyond his size. The man cursed from the other side. Then footsteps, fast and retreating. The side gate creaked open again. Silence. Echo froze, sniffed the air, and then let out a low warning bark just once. Natalie sat shaking in the hallway, her breath caught in her chest. Her hand finally reached the phone. She called Ethan. He answered on the second ring. "Natalie?" "He was here," she gasped. "A man, I saw him on the camera. He tried the door." Echo stopped him. Ethan didn't ask questions. "I'm turning around now. Lock everything. Stay with Echo." 7 minutes later, Ethan burst through the front door, soaked from the rain, eyes frantic. Echo barked once in greeting, then trotted toward the yard, ears alert. Ethan followed and found it. A folding knife dropped on the walkway near the gate. He picked it up with a tissue and brought it inside, locking every bolt on the door behind him. Natalie was pale, still gripping her phone. Echo hadn't left her side since the attack. When the police arrived 20 minutes later, they reviewed the footage, bagged the knife, and took statements from both Natalie and Ethan. "He didn't make it inside," one officer said, kneeling to scratch behind Echo's ears. "And I think we all know why." Natalie looked at the little German shepherd, now curled protectively at her feet, eyes still scanning the room. "He didn't hesitate," she whispered. "He didn't even flinch." "You've got a hell of a guard dog," the officer said, standing. "Better than most alarms." They promised increased patrols, but it didn't matter. Echo had already proven something far more powerful than any siren. He wasn't just a rescue. He was a protector. That night, Natalie slept on the couch again. Ethan stayed beside her, one hand wrapped around hers, the other gently resting on Echo's back. He didn't move. He just watched. And for the first time since the strange events began, Ethan wasn't afraid. Because now he understood. Echo wasn't just protecting their home. He was protecting his family. The morning after the break-in attempt, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about Echo's reaction. The way he had moved, fast, focused, precise, wasn't normal for a puppy. Something in the bark, the stance, even the way he tracked the intruder's steps outside, told Ethan there was more to Echo than they realized. After making sure Natalie was safe and resting, Ethan drove straight to the local veterinary clinic. Echo curled in the passenger seat, alert but calm. The pepper spray from the night before had faded from his fur, but something new lingered in his eyes, a sharpness, like he was back on duty. Inside the clinic, Ethan explained everything to the technician. "I know we scanned him before, but could you do it again? Just to be sure. Maybe we missed something." The technician, a middle-aged woman with salt and pepper hair, nodded and grabbed the scanner. She waved it over Echo's shoulder. And this time, beep. A number appeared on the screen. "That's odd," she muttered, walking quickly to her computer. "It's linked, but not to a private owner." Ethan leaned over. "Then to who?" She typed a few more lines, then blinked. "It's tied to a training facility, federal." Military K-9 development program. Canceled 4 years ago. Ethan's jaw tightened. So you're telling me Echo was bred for service? She nodded slowly. Looks like it. Program was shut down before most of the pups completed training. Records show his litter was marked as non-deployed, early aptitude signs. No owners assigned. Basically, someone took him before he was officially released. Back in the truck, Ethan sat for a long moment, staring at Echo. You weren't just a rescue, were you? He whispered. Echo didn't bark. He simply placed his head on Ethan's arm, calm as ever. That night, Ethan told Natalie everything. She listened quietly, hands curled in her lap, eyes never leaving Echo. I knew it, she said at last. He's always been different. He's aware. Ethan nodded. It explains the way he moved, how he guarded you. Those instincts, they were trained, or maybe born. Natalie looked down at Echo, who lay between them. Then he found the right mission. Later, as the couple sat quietly in the living room, Ethan pulled up the footage from the previous night again. In the frame where the intruder approached the house, something caught his eye. A tattoo, faint but visible, on the man's wrist. 3 jagged lines. Ethan paused the video, zoomed in. His stomach turned. I've seen that before. He reached for his phone and dialed an old contact. Leo, a retired cop turned private investigator. When Leo saw the screenshot, his voice dropped. That's a mark used by a crew we investigated years ago. Small time but smart. They target soft homes, places with injured or isolated people. You were a mark. Ethan's fist clenched. Not anymore. He looked at Echo. The dog's eyes were wide open, fixed on the door. This wasn't coincidence. It was fate, and Echo was ready for whatever came next. 2 nights later, the house was unusually still. The air outside was damp, and a low mist clung to streets. Ethan had just begun to drift off when a low growl echoed through the room. Not a bark, not a whine, but a deep, vibrating warning. He sat up instantly. Echo, Natalie whispered, sitting up in bed. The dog stood rigid at the window, ears forward, eyes locked on the darkness outside. In a flash, Ethan was on his feet, grabbing the flashlight from the nightstand and checking the backyard camera feed. Motion detected. 2:13 a.m. He tapped play. There it was again, the same hooded figure from the last time. But this time clearer, bolder. The man moved along the fence line, crouched, and pulled something shiny from his coat. Possibly a crowbar. Ethan's pulse spiked. Stay here. Lock the door, he told Natalie. He grabbed his old service baton from the hallway closet, then cracked the back door open. The air was heavy with dew. Echo was already at his side, tense, alert, ready. Without a word, they moved, 1 man, 1 dog in total sync. The backyard gate creaked again. A shadow darted past the fence. Echo took off like lightning, barking furiously. Ethan followed, his boots pounding the earth. Through the brush, they saw him. The intruder, sprinting toward the woods behind the neighborhood. Stop, Ethan shouted. But the man didn't stop. He glanced back, then tried to scale the fence. Echo was faster. He leapt forward, barking with terrifying force. The intruder stumbled, lost his grip, and fell. Ethan caught up just as the man rolled to his feet and pulled a knife from his belt. Back off, the man growled, swinging wildly. But Echo wasn't backing down. He growled, teeth bared, eyes burning with focused fury. Ethan stepped forward, baton raised. You don't want to do this. The man lunged, but Echo moved first, dodging the blade and slamming his body into the attacker's legs, knocking him off balance. Ethan tackled him from behind, pinning him down with the baton pressed to his back. The man fought, but it was no use. Within seconds, Ethan had him cuffed with zip ties pulled from his belt. Panting, Ethan looked down at Echo, who was standing over them, silent but watchful. Good boy, he muttered, breathless. The police arrived 10 minutes later. Flashing lights bathed the backyard in red and blue. Officers took the man into custody and began questioning Ethan. One of them, Officer Moreno, examined the intruder's backpack and found zip ties, gloves, duct tape, and a burner phone. We've been tracking this guy's crew for weeks, she said, targeting homes with women alone. You weren't just a random hit. You were profiled. Natalie, now safe in the doorway, stared at the officers in disbelief. Her voice trembled. He could have, but he didn't, Ethan said, pulling her into his arms. Because of Echo. Echo stood nearby, calm now, tail wagging slightly. "Is that your dog?" Moreno asked, crouching to scratch behind Echo's ears. "I've seen K9S freeze in situations like this." But he held his ground. Ethan nodded. "He was born for it. We just didn't know." Later that night, after everyone had left, Ethan sat beside Echo, rubbing the dog's fur gently. "You didn't just protect our home," he whispered. "You chased away a nightmare." Echo laid his head on Ethan's knee and closed his eyes. Outside, the wind blew softly through the trees. Inside, a family slept safely, guarded not by locks or alarms, but by a protector who had never stopped watching. And he wasn't finished yet. News of the attempted break-in and Echo's heroic response spread quickly throughout the community. Within days, the image of the alert German Shepherd puppy, standing guard by the door, made its way onto the local evening news. The anchor called him a four-legged hero. A neighbor's door camera had caught part of the chase, Echo's powerful bark echoing through the night, and the clip quickly went viral online. Ethan and Natalie never wanted attention. But as hundreds of messages flooded their inbox from veterans, trauma survivors, and families with special needs children, they realized this wasn't just their story anymore. "Echo didn't just protect us," Natalie whispered one night, running her fingers through his thick fur. "Maybe now he can help others, too." A week later, they brought Echo to a local community center, hosting a healing event for children dealing with grief and trauma. At first, Echo simply lay at Natalie's feet, calm and steady as always, eyes watchful but kind. In the corner of the room, an 8-year-old boy, who hadn't spoken since witnessing a family tragedy, sat curled in on himself. But when he saw Echo, his eyes lit up. Slowly, he walked over, knelt down, and gently rested his forehead against the dog's head. "I'm not scared when you're here," he whispered. That moment changed everything. From that day forward, Echo became more than a family dog. He became a source of healing. Ethan and Natalie brought him to rehabilitation centers, women's shelters, veteran homes, and schools. Wherever he went, people felt safer, calmer, seen. He didn't do tricks. He didn't bark commands. He simply existed, silent, loyal, and profoundly present. At a summer camp for kids with disabilities, one girl finally smiled after Echo nudged a drop toy back into her lap with his nose. At a VA hospital, an aging war vet reached out a trembling hand to stroke Echo's back. "He reminds me of my partner," the man said quietly, tears welling up in his eyes. In each place, Echo left behind something gentle, unseen but deeply felt, a sense of peace. He was eventually certified as an official therapy dog. No one could have imagined this beginning when Ethan had found him trembling in a box behind a gas station. From an abandoned, frightened puppy, Echo had become a symbol of resilience, trust, and second chances. One evening, as the three of them sat on the porch swing under a violet sky, Natalie leaned down and whispered, "Do you remember the box, sweet boy?" Echo looked up at her, eyes warm and serene. No bark, no wag, just that deep, soulful gaze that said, "I remember." Echo's journey wasn't just about loyalty. It was a reminder that a single act of kindness, choosing not to look away, choosing to care, can ripple outward in ways no one expects. And in a world often too quick to discard the weak, Echo became proof that every being deserves the chance to be loved, to be trusted, to belong. That night, as Natalie rested on the couch and Ethan worked on emails nearby, Echo lay between them as always, not as a guard dog, not even as just a pet, but as family, a guardian of more than just their home, of their hearts, their healing, and the quiet hope that had found its voice in the bark of a forgotten puppy. And somewhere out there, another lost dog waited for someone who would believe they were worth saving too. The story of Echo is more than just a tale of a rescued dog. It's a powerful reminder of loyalty, healing, and the kind of silent strength that can change lives. In today's fast-paced world, where isolation, fear, and emotional wounds often go unnoticed, Echo stands as a beacon of hope. From a shivering puppy abandoned near a gas station to a brave protector and therapy companion, Echo showed us that true heroes don't always wear badges. Sometimes, they come wrapped in fur and walk on four paws. Echo didn't need superpowers. He wasn't trained to be a savior, But through unconditional love and an instinct to protect, he became exactly what Ethan and Natalie and so many others needed. In real life, each of us has the power to be someone's echo. You don't need to change the world. Sometimes just being present, offering a hand, or standing guard for someone going through a dark time is enough. So take this story to heart. Slow down. Love deeper. Pay attention to the quiet signals around you. The small acts of kindness, the moments of silent support, the loyalty that asks for nothing in return. Those are the things that truly shape lives. Be open to connection, not just with people, but with the world and creatures around you. Because sometimes, the one you save turns out to be the one who saves you. And in a world that often feels chaotic, let's remember, kindness is never wasted, and courage often comes in the softest form. Echo may have been found in a box, but his legacy lives on in every person he touched. Be that light for someone. Be their echo.